they have finished. If you have a question, please press the virtual hand so that that can be seen on the screen, and the chair will try and call you in the order of people indicating in the chamber and hands appearing on the screen. The same will apply if you have a comment to make. If for any reason you have cause to leave the meeting, please can you make sure that you let us know, either by raising your hand and asking for permission to speak or by putting something in the chat. And if you do have cause to leave, the case law is clear that you cannot vote on a matter where you haven't heard the whole of the debate. So we will be relying on members to let us know if they have or haven't heard the whole of the debate. When it comes to recommendations, the members in the chamber will be voting electronically, and so I will just call out the names of members who are attending remotely and ask them the way in which they would wish to vote. And so on that basis, I think, Mr. Mayor, we are ready to commence the meeting if Democratic Services want to start recording.
Okay, thank you, Gareth. Okay. Prynondar Croeso, good afternoon. Welcome to the Merthyr Tydfil County Borough Council full council meeting on today, Wednesday, the 13th of September 2023. Please note that this meeting has been recorded and may be broadcast via the authority's internet site. The images and sound recording may also be used for training purposes within the authority. Agenda item number 1, apologies for absence.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, we have apologies from Councillor Gareth Richards and Councillor Jeremy Davis. We have Councillor Kevin Gibbs attending remotely, and I think that Councillor David Isaacs was intending to attend remotely, but I can't see that he has joined. And so if he doesn't join, we will need to record his apologies for being unable to be here.
Okay, thank you. Item number 2, declarations of interest. Are there any declarations? No, nobody's indicating. Agenda item number 3 is a presentation from Gijs, Your Voice in Health and Social Care, and we're receiving a presentation from Mr. Dan Price, the Regional Director.
Thank you. I'm glad you used the name Dan, because that's always the first part of the presentation. I don't go by Daniel, which is on all the formal correspondence. I think for the organisation we like to be a little bit more informal when we engage with members of the public. It just makes us more amenable to the individuals. So I'll move past that. So I'll say there, I'm the Regional Director for Cwm Taf Morgannwg. We used to be on the names Chief Officer, and there was some accountability in there. Now that we're one organisation, which I'm about to tell you about, we're not autonomous. We don't have that level of accountability that rests with our Chief Executive Officer. There's a Strategic Director as well, and then you've got us as Regional Directors, so one for each of the health board areas in Wales. So Llais is a new independent statutory body set up by Welsh Government and replaced the Community Health Councils in Wales from the 1st of April. So the reason for that, because it's not going to appear in the slides, is so that we could take on social care. As you can imagine, the regulatory impact that's required to make such a change, you can't just do that by changing the existing regulations. So it was an abolishment and then recreation as Llais. Community Health Councils have been around since 1974. There'd been changes in 2002 when England abolished their community health councils, and we retained the names until now. Creating a new body also gave the opportunity to add some Welsh identity to it. So there isn't an equivalent body in England. And one thing that we've learned today is at the moment, Welsh Government haven't got a commitment to create a patient safety commissioner in Wales, because that role currently sits with us as the patient's voice body. So they're going to see how that develops. Obviously, if we can't take up certain aspects of that role, they'd look at the commissioner arrangement, but we hope we can fill that gap as England have one currently. So we are there for the people of Wales to have their voices heard in the planning and delivery of health and social care services. That's locally, regionally and nationally. We used to be classed as local in terms of the health board area, obviously taking on local authorities. That doesn't work anymore, particularly in Cwm Taf Morgannwg. So we've got the 3 local authority areas. What we're also discussing, which is new, is hyper-local. So as you can imagine, the 3 local authority areas, if you're aware of the neighbours, Rhondda, Cynon, Taff has its split off into the Cynon Valley. We find actually Cynon doesn't fit very well with the rest of Rhondda, Cynon, Taff because of the mountains in between. If any of you can remember the South Wales programme many years ago, You can tell me if that's a contentious issue we don't want to bring up, because it always talks about A&Es, doesn't it? And we don't want to get into that. But, you know, everyone said we won't travel over the mountains. We travel south for many services. So we're looking at some of that hyper-local arrangement and acknowledging that many areas and communities need to be looked at, not just from the lens of Merthyr, Rhondda Cynon Taf and Bridgend, Bryn individuals. So in Bridgend, for example, Porthcawl, Maesteg. In Merthyr, we've also got to go up to the offshoots as well, and the GP practices in particular. So move into the south and the travel down there. So I've got to make you aware of our board now. We're a single organisation in Wales, so we do have a board. On your screens there, you'll be able to see Alison Thomas is our Chief Executive and Medwyn Hughes is our Chair. It's important then to point out the other 7, so the non-executive board members, there's 6 of those and a deputy chair. Each one of those is a regional ambassador. So ours is Karen Lewis, who's the top left of the white screen. So her role will be to meet with me on a quarterly basis to understand the nuances in Cwm Taf Morgannwg. So when the board take national decisions, they aren't negatively impacting and influencing things that we undertake in Cwm Taf Morgannwg. They also contribute any of our issues that we identify and make them national. If I said to you GP issues, how many of you would nod your heads to having heard any of that? I would probably see you all nodding if we raised it. That's similar grounds. Everyone's going to say GP issues, so it gets picked up on the board level, and that'll become a national theme. So they'll take everything like that, and it'll either be a regional approach where more than one region come together, so a super region. And then we talk about our staff. So we've got a senior management team. That's where I've been for the last 2 days. We've got 2 strategic directors, one of Director of Operations and Corporate Services. So as a new organisation, we're no longer hosted by the Health Service. We used to be. We're now independent. We now have to have our own HR arrangements, our own finance arrangements. There's the Corporate Services and the Strategic Director of Strategy and Engagement. So that's looking at things like national consultations where changes are made on a national footing. Policy changes from Welsh Government as well come under that banner. So they're constantly a rise and scanning for what's coming out so that we can factor those into a lot of our local work as well. So we can ask the residents of Cwm Taf Morgannwg what they think about these bigger things that sometimes you miss when you're concentrating on the local matters. 7 regional directors, and as I've said, then there's a head of people wellbeing and organisational development, a head of finance, and we're also going to have a head of comms and engagement coming shortly as well. To support that, you probably wonder, what does that mean in Cwm Taf Morgannwg? Because that board is looking at the national matters and what have we got to look locally. So that's our structure there as it currently sits. That's transferred over from the CHC times. So we have enhanced our staffing by the addition of 1 advocate, and that's the individual on the far left of the 4. And we've got another advocacy support officer, which I've appointed to recently. The Deputy Regional Director vacancy has been there since the start of April because the individual who was in the role didn't want to continue into the new organisation. So we are only... I'm just double checking. It is only 12 members of staff we've got at the moment. They're not whole-time equivalents, so that is under 12. I think we've got about 9.5 whole-time equivalents to service the whole area of Cwm Taf Morgannwg. But what you can see there is the balance is on the advocacy side, and just remember that for when we come into the roles we undertake. So we talk about volunteers next. Reason for that is I'm on the lookout for volunteers. If you are aware of anyone who's got any interest in health and social services or want to give something back to their communities and engage with people, constantly open. We're looking for these volunteers. We used to have members. If anyone's had any interactions with the community health councils, the members were the CHC. Although they had a role and a remit to engage with the population, decisions were made by members. Removing that membership model can make it appear as if it's staff-led and therefore it's my voice that counts for every decision we make. It's not. The regulations state that we have to take the voice of the public, whether that's one voice or multiple voices, and that is how we make our decisions on a local prioritisation basis. So we're developing the new approach to volunteering with current volunteers. staff, stakeholders, and anyone new who's got an interest in our services. So we're looking to offer flexibility. Membership model used to be 3 to 5 days a month you had to commit. You had to attend our CHC council meetings. You had to attend other committee meetings. You had to undertake visits to hospital premises, and you had to undertake engagement activities. You don't have to do that all anymore. So now if we were to find a volunteer who only wanted to go and visit services, they can just say that. They can pick their local authority area as well. They can say come to Morgana Gwaed, but they can also say we only want to cover the area of Merthyr. So I think that will encourage more people, because a lot of people want to do for their local area more than travelling across. Now, obviously, it's different in some areas. I've come from Cardiff and Vale of Glamorgan from a working background for about 12 years. And the Cardiff and Vale, they work very closely together, especially the population of Barry. They're happy to travel. What I found is, even within Bridgend, Porthcawl want to do Porthcawl, Maesteg want to do Maesteg, and Central Bridgend want to do Bridgend. Obviously, Merthyr is different. There's this concentration, and there's a smaller geographical area, but you still see people who only want to do specific wards. And I've had that in other areas as well. I've had to actually talk to people who have ticked. Can you imagine ticking visiting, and you pick an area in Merthyr that actually cuts out Prince Charles Hospital? Where else are you going to visit other than maybe one GP surgery or a pharmacy or one day facility? So we're still having those discussions, because when people see flexibility, it opens up. We want to get some diversity in there. We're not speaking out of turn. It's in all our literature. Predominantly, our membership has always been over 50s, white, and predominantly female, but less so than the other demographics. So probably a 63% split to females to men. So that's always been our demographics. We've struggled with all sorts of diversity. That's LGBTQ+, youth, ethnicity. We have really struggled with diversity. Accessible and inclusive recruitment. So previously, you had to go through the Welsh Government's public appointments process. You don't have to do that anymore. I can furnish you all with application forms to share with anyone you think might be interested. They submit the application, they come in and have a chat with me and my regional operations manager. Used to be a business, I mean, these titles, forgive me, they are very, very long. I don't know who's come up with them, but they are stuck on job titles, so I am stuck with them at the moment. But it's just having a chat with me and that other individual, and as long as there's no red flags and you can see their genuine interest in doing something for the population, then we'll take them on, because now we can have upwards of 50, 100, 200 volunteers, whereas we were limited in membership. We could only have 36 previously. So you can imagine trying to get those members who are volunteers still previously, covering every GP practice, every pharmacy, every opticians, every dentist, every hospital, and adding social care on. So now we've got this flexibility and this different approach, we can take more people on. And we're developing learning and support to support those appropriately. The starting point is always going to be safeguarding. So as soon as they come on, they're DBS checked and straight onto safeguarding training, so they can get out and speak to people in our communities. Right, the interesting part now, and I've delivered this presentation many times, you might not tell me because you want to be polite, but no one likes to hear that first bit when I speak to the public. They want to hear about what it is that we actually do. So 3 core areas of activity: engage and gather people's views. As I said, you probably are aware of some of the work of the CHCs previously. They used to do scrutiny visits, that used to be inspections before that. They'd engage with people, and there's a role in service change as well, and making sure people can contribute to service change proposals from the health service. All 3 of those are still there, but they're all considered as engagement now. So it's engaging and gathering people's views on all those different aspects of the work that we can cover. Our staff and volunteers will work with people, community representatives and groups in all parts of Wales to hear local people's views and experiences of health and social care services, so that we can understand what works well and how services may need to be improved. For me, it doesn't matter whether it's a scrutiny visit to a hospital premises and now social care premises. We were in the Big Bite in Ponty a couple of weeks ago. Or if it's a service change and we have to arrange meetings where we just talk about the service change. At the end of the day, it's just what people want to share their views about that we want to hear. So the forum doesn't matter. It's about engaging with people, and that's where the training is changing. Our training needs to be about listening to people understanding what they're saying, sharing those concerns with the office team in the right way. So yes, that's writing reports. We're still going to need some of that involved, as much as we try to get away from it, because volunteers don't want to be sat in the house for 2 hours after a 2-hour visit writing reports. So we're trying to find ways to make that as easy as possible. So it is about engaging, and then raising awareness of us now as the new organisation and learning about social care. What we get asked then is, okay, so what? You hear what people are saying, how do you make a difference? So it comes down to the second element, which is working with decision makers at local, regional and national level through making representations. So in a legal term, we've been assured that representation is one of the strongest words you can use. And there is a duty on the NHS, local authorities and any other decision makers to make sure people's views and experiences improve health and social care services for everyone. So they don't just receive our letters and put them in an in tray and leave them there for however long. The health service, local authorities and any others that are decision makers in terms of the provision of that care have to take account of what we've said, have processes in place to take it through their internal structures and systems and respond to us with what it is they're going to do in response. Now, previously, members would make recommendations and they would state what it is they thought was needed in terms of an action to respond to the concerns raised by the public. Our job is to raise those concerns that the public have raised, but what we're also going to be asking, so back into the engagement level, is, okay, that's not working for you. What do you think you need that service to look like for it to work for you? Because otherwise I'm making assumptions. I'll hear what's gone wrong and I could make a recommendation that could make it worse. So we ask the public, what is it that you think needs to be put right? Or what would you like to see that service looking like moving forward? It's for the health service, local authorities and others to then come back to us and say, this is what we will do in response. And again, I'm happy to be critical about how we used to work. That would be it. And we used to class those as outcomes. Decision makers would say, we'll do this to put things right. We never checked. We never went back to the population to ask, is that going to work for you? Are you happy with what they're saying? We now have to factor that in as well. So when we get a response from these service providers, decision makers, we take that back out to the communities, test whether that's right. And if it's agreed by our communities and the people who raise those concerns with us, we then put in a review process, a follow-up process to check that the actions they've committed to are actually actioned. And we're working on the escalation arrangements for that. Previously, if any of you might be aware of a service change that's come up that hasn't been agreed, our escalation in that regard was to the Minister for Health, because we were hosted by the Minister for Health. Our role now extends to actually scrutinising the Minister for Health in terms of policy decisions. So we're not hosted by that department anymore. So we have to find our escalation arrangements that will work. We have got links now with the Director General of the NHS, who can obviously put pressure onto chief executives, and we don't even know what scrutiny is going to look like in social care, but that will need to be worked through as well, accepting that local authorities don't make as many service changes as health do, and certainly not to the same extent as you can imagine with clinical services plans and developments to hospitals. And then the third area, when things go wrong, we support people to make those complaints. So that's our complaints advocacy service. I think some of you might be aware of that, where we have individuals come to us, they raise their concerns. We can take the process off their hands. What I used to explain, because it was in the presentations before, was, you know, people who struggle to read and write, we'd support those. Vulnerable individuals, we'd support those. Language barrier, we support those people as well. What we're finding now, because of the cost of living crisis, because of what COVID has caused, everyone is asking for help with complaints processes, because to take that stress off anyone is a great help. So you could see earlier, we've got 4 advocates, 2 advocacy support officers out of 12 members of staff, which includes me as a manager of the service and my deputy, who would obviously deputise in my absence, but also performs a role in terms of advocacy when things start to get difficult with the health service and we need some escalation arrangements there as well. So 6 staff out of 12, that's 50% of our resource, is put into the advocacy service to support people with complaints. What we understand at the moment is people are aware of us in health. We get more health complaints. with a health complaint, and I've tried to explain this to our team, something goes wrong, and I'm not saying it's a light touch, something major can go wrong in health, but essentially health is an episode of care where you go into a facility, get provided a service and come out. And if it's gone wrong, they could operate on the wrong arm, take a wrong tooth out, leave you with your problems, or they can cause harm as well. That is relatively easy to discuss from a complaint advocacy perspective. So that's where our numbers were based on before. When we talk about social care where someone is conveying complaints to us, when it's something that's lasted maybe 10, 12 years, it's a lot harder to go through that story with individuals to try and get their actual issues out, to put them down in paper to make sense. What we've seen as well from speaking with complaints teams within the local authorities to date is that individuals do struggle to convey those points as well when they're making a complaint, so it makes it harder to investigate. So it may seem to them, and this is the feedback we've been receiving, is that they don't take the complaint seriously, but actually when you look at the complaints, they've really struggled to convey their points and get to the crux of the matter. That happens in health, and it's an episode of care. In social care, it is spanning their lifetime. So we think we're going to need to increase that resource further, but the only way we can increase that resource year on year will be to have the evidence to show that the demand has increased significantly beyond what our capacity currently is. So what we would like you to do, and this extends to everyone, even individuals who work within local authorities, because it then spans into health, and in health because of the local authority connection, is just raise awareness within your organisations, with other organisations you connect with the communities you serve, so everyone knows about us. The more people who contact me, the more evidence I will have to say I need additional resource to increase that advocacy service. Work with us to develop our ways of working and how we can work effectively in partnership with you so voices of people in your communities are heard. I'm not going to share my email address, my personal one, because I don't answer it very well. There's 4,500 emails waiting at the moment, but we are making sure our generic inquiry mailboxes are answered and there's staff there that can flag things with me when they need my attention. So I'm sure many of you have sent emails to different people and you haven't had a response for a few weeks and think, well, do they take it seriously? It just gets lost in the ether because I don't think anyone uses emails as effectively as we perhaps should or could. So we're making sure those arrangements are in place. And the third one, I'm just going to move the image off the screen because I've got the camera pointing there, and it's to help us understand the key priorities and challenges for health and social care services in the areas you serve. Clicked off the screen now, so I'll put that. Contact details are on the slides, and I can share the presentation so it's sent out to you as well. And then I've got any questions.
Thanks, Dan. Any questions from members? Councillor Clive Jones. Claire Jones, beg your pardon, Claire. I'm so used to me and Clive.
Sorry, Clive. I would just like to say, how is this being disseminated to individuals? Because I know nothing about this, and I know somebody would have needed this service, and it's quite, to think that somebody's been going through a complaint since January, and we are now in September. And I've just heard of this. I just think it's wrong and nobody's passed any information. Do you not think perhaps when somebody puts a complaint into CumTAF that they should be, when they send an acknowledgement letter, they should have the information about your services? Because I think it's disgusting that 9 months after, now I know about this. So
no, and I'm happy to be completely open and transparent with everything. I think it's better to be self-critical rather than be caught out. I don't think since COVID, CumTAF Morgannwg CHC recovered very well. I had our members previously, they were clamouring to get back out in the communities. We didn't set it up, so we're not well known. Llais came about on the 1st of April, so that still would have been a 3-month delay. That's not good enough to learn about the service. There was a massive campaign. I was told we're on the back of buses, we're on radio stations, but still people are not hearing about us. in Cwm Taf Morgannwg, what's the best way for people to hear about us, learn about us, is to be out there talking to people and being as seen as far and wide as possible. And that's why I'm here today. If you've got any ideas of where else I can go, I'll go there. We need to be out and about on the ground, setting up outreach. So that's where I can talk about some of the things we've got going on. I'm looking at the local areas. I want to get the public fora back that the health service used to run, if anyone can remember them. So I want to get them set back up run by us, and the health service will get invited, and we'll base it on what the population tell us they want at those meetings. In terms of the acknowledgement letters, we should be in them. So if there's examples of acknowledgement letters that we're not in, if we can be made aware of that, because there is actually a Welsh Government mandate that all social care complaints and health complaints should be responded to with our details.
Now that a response was received from the ambulance service where, if I'm not mistaken, you were in there, but as for Cwm Taf, you're still not in there. So my question to you now is, if somebody is going through a concern and they've been dealing with it since January, would it be too late for? Okay, thank you.
No, not too late. We can get involved in any point of the process. So, you know, I've said people now realise before a process starts, the stress may become too much. I'll put my hands up. I've also felt the need for support from someone to take it off me. So I've used another office. I can't use myself. So I've used another office for that support. It's invaluable. But if you start going through that process, and it's not just because you're becoming aware of us, if you go through that process and the stress starts becoming too much or the anxiety builds up, just reach out and ask for help. That's what the service is there for. So no, they can join at any point. Some people come at us once they've submitted a complaint. Obviously, we've lost our opportunity to help them focus their questions. But we're there then for when they receive their formal response, we can help them with the next steps, which is asking questions of the health service. We can then set up an independent meeting with them. So meet neutral ground, bring the consultant along, have that discussion, and help them with public service ombudsman submissions as well. So we can do all of that. And no, it's never too late.
Okay, thank you. That's really appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Jamie Scriven, please.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just wanted to ask Dan, have you had any contact or work with the Youth Health Board and the Cardiff and Vale Health Board?
In terms of,
I'm just thinking in terms of you, if you're looking at the diversity of who you're going to have involved now in, as volunteers, Lisa Corderoy runs the Youth Health Board and the Cardiff and Vale. They've got a very good practice model of engaging young people, the same as you can contact Junaid Iqbal through Public Health Wales. This might help push things along in terms of you engaging young people, and I think it'd be good for you to engage with our local youth forum as well, and we can put you in contact with them just to support with that volunteer aspect. So I was wondering, had you worked with anyone previously that engages young people through health and social care?
no, we've always really struggled with youth engagement. Anyway, when you send the members were always the lifeblood of the organisation, and when they went out, they would always stick within the demographics would be the same of the people you engage with and who's doing the engagement. The slide was on the slide with the structure. It was vacant for my deputy regional director, recently appointed, hoping to have them start by the end of October. But it is an individual who's got significant background in terms of youth engagement. Comes from the Guide Dogs UK, where they did a youth engagement, taking guide dogs into schools, and Book Trust Cymru. So I'm hoping I'll bring that expertise in as well, rather than me learning fresh. You know, I'll have someone with that expertise ready. But not any suggestions you've got. You'll have my contact details. If you can send them across, it'd be very welcome.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Scriven. Councillor Geraint Thomas, please.
Thank you, Dan, for your presentation. A comment first, and before I got a question. I think we're happy, you know, for the Cynon Valley to join us in Merthyr Tydfil, and we could open up the Aberdan Tunnel, and there's easy access then either way. So we're pushing that with Welsh Government at the moment, so hopefully we'll get that sorted. On the engagement side as well, we've got a report coming tonight, because we know how difficult it is in the council, and you need more feet on the ground, really, because that's where it is. You've got to get more people on the ground to speak to everybody, not just the young people, but everyone as well. And we've got a report coming this evening on that issue. But the question I got is how do you feed up to the PSB or the RPB with the information that you gather in the community to help us form some of our strategies and policies going forward. So how do you go about that?
So from the RPB perspective, we've, as CHCs, we never engaged, or if we did, it was a very, very light touch. As part of the regulatory impact assessment from the creation of Llais, it was identified we needed to be involved in the RPBs. So we are now a named member of the RPB. It's been created in such a way, though, that we are classed as an invitee, but we're not an invitee. We are actually a named member in terms of the regulations, but we can't be considered a member because we can't be part of the decision-making process when it comes to the spend of money. So it's been really difficult to work that through, but no, we will be invited. So we will be contributors. In joining the RPB in that sense, from a regulation perspective, we also identified that WAST weren't named members. So WAST are also going to be considered under the same light as ourselves now. So WAST will be involved in terms of a transport perspective for any moving of services, and we'll be there as well. We haven't been invited to the first two, but if I don't get invited to the third, the minister has agreed to get involved and say, because it's non-negotiable, we are now named, we have to be there, it's in regulations. So I hope to be at the next meeting.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Thomas. Yeah, we've got an online question next, a remote question from Councillor Kevin Gibbs, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Dan, for your presentation. Very, very insightful. Following on from Councillor Thomas's question, how do you guys feed into the joint overview and scrutiny committee for CUNTAF? So I heard you mention scrutiny earlier. So how do you guys have any input into that whatsoever?
We haven't as yet. I have noticed some of the changes where Bridgend were included in one of the scrutiny committees. So we are looking at how we get involved in that. It hasn't been set out in regulations, so it'll be down to engagement, discussion and agreement with the group. But I am also hoping to get involved with the local authority scrutiny committees so that the things we hear in the communities we can feed into the scrutiny committee as well and help shape local authorities' way forward as well. So there's still a lot of work to do. We are still new. Just to give you an example of where we are as well, I haven't got brand new leaflets for you that are orange and green. I've got some basic handouts there, but yeah, we haven't even got the leaflets ready. So we are still a work in progress. We were CHC up until the 31st of March and we were Llais from the 1st of April. So it wasn't as if our staff could work towards that implementation date. We are still trying to catch up. We are still using some of our pre-existing CHC procedures, policy systems, but we are changing at pace. And as I say, any suggestions you've got of where we should be focusing, happy to receive them.
Lovely, thank you, Dan. And I'll give it the reason for the question there. I sit on the joint overview and scrutiny committee, and I have been for the last number of years, and I can never remember the CHC actually presenting anything into it. So I was just wondering whether there was going to be any change and whether you guys would be.
If you could get me an invite, I'd be even more welcome into that. But no, I think what I've seen since I joined Cwmtaf Morgannwg, or in the CHC days, because I was there for the last 9 months, was we weren't out and about. We weren't meeting with people. I've met with members of Senedd who had never heard of the CHC. Granted, across Cwmtaf Morgannwg, we had a lot of new members of Senedd in the last elections, but we just weren't meeting with them. And I still, it is a we. I wasn't there, but it is we, because that's the organisation I came into. I'm from Tonypandy, so it is my local region. And I feel very passionate now about us getting back out in the communities. I don't want to work with online surveys at the moment. I want to work with face-to-face, build that up, because I feel you need to have that network in place before you can use online activities. Because actually, if someone sees an online submission or survey coming from an organisation they've never engaged with, they don't actually put much weight to that. And I do it for all introduction meetings as well. I'd rather be here in person rather than going home and jumping on the computer or driving straight to the office. It's a bit, I darted here from Llandrindod. I hope that gives some assurance of what we want to achieve now in the region. I've been in Llandrindod for 2 days. I could have joined. I think the offer was made for us to join virtually. I think it's very important that you see my face, I see your faces. So if you see me in the field for Big Bite or any other events that we arrange, you feel confident to come up and approach me, and you understand my personality a little bit more as well. So I think we need to do a lot more of that. So I'm sorry we weren't there before, but yeah, if you could get me an invite, very grateful.
Councillor Mitten is vice chair, I believe, so she should be able to help you. Thanks, Dan. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
So thanks.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Gibbs. Now we do go to Councillor Clive Jones, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's very interesting presentation. And I think two of the parts of that you mentioned were the advocates. I think you also referred to the fact that you got 4,500 emails. I don't know whether that's in your inbox or somebody else's inbox, but it seems a hell of a lot of emails waiting to be answered. And I understand this is a brand new organisation, and obviously whether you worked in the community health councils before, you're finding your feet. I know a little bit about the community health councils. I was a member of the local one year for 18 years and 2 health boards subsequently in Cwmtaf and Cwmtaf Morgannwg. I think it's 7 advocates you mentioned.
4 advocates and 2 advocacy support officers.
So that's covering the whole of Wales?
Cwmtaf Morgannwg.
Ah, right. Sorry, I got the wrong impression. You know, you've got not just the health service now, which is massive, and then you've got social services for 3 authorities. Number one, if somebody sends an email, and certainly to us as elected members, they expect an answer within a matter of hours. So clearly from the start, you appear to me to be snowed under. And I think first and foremost, emails is the first avenue of people trying to get in touch with you and know who to speak to. So I think you've got a bit of a problem to start with. And frankly, I wonder whether it's 6 or 7 advocates is enough for the amount of work that you've got to get through in the Cwmtaf Morgannwg area.
No, so in terms of emails, they're my emails, so they're not members of the public emails, thankfully, but there might be 1 or 2 in there. It's why some people ask for the regional director or the manager's email address, and it's why I'm straight up front to say I don't share that, because at the moment that's bogged down with drafts of leaflets, drafts of posters, the new standing financial instructions, because we still budget holders. So everything goes through our generic mailboxes. We've actually set one up dedicated for advocacy for that very reason. We have so many inquiries come in. People say about, you know, the appointment system in this practice and this practice, and you know, I'm just talking health. So we don't want people who've got complaints to be lost in any of that general traffic that'll get logged as inquiries. And in terms of the number, we work on the basis of an average, and we are revisiting this because the complexity of it changes with social care. It's 11 cases per 7.5 hours. So our capacity would be 55 cases for a whole time equivalent, and the whole time equivalent is about 3.5 on there. So we can manage around 175 to 180 cases in terms of general capacity, and that's based on health data. So no, I'm adding a lot of detail into this, but in terms of health, like I said, we've never seen meetings go beyond an hour and a half. Maybe it'll stretch to 2 hours. When someone comes and tells us about their entire life story, because social care may have been involved from a very early age, maybe 2 or 3 as a child, because they've got disabilities, and now they're 25 and they want to tell us that whole story, is an hour and a half going to cut it? I actually don't think so. I think our advocates are with them for about 3 to 4 hours. I've learned that at events. I was at the Aberdeen Festival, which was unfortunately a little bit of a washout. But when we had health, they'd come in and they say, just can't see my GP, or they misdiagnosed this. And there's detail around it, but it's still very, very simplistic in comparison to what I had from social care. Because when they came in, they talked about the removal of children, how that felt for them. They then didn't get signposted for the anxiety that was caused as a result, and then ongoing problems. So even just having a brief chat about who we are and what we could do, the difference between health and social care was chalk and cheese. There's a lot more time and nuance required in social care, but also acknowledging, as you said, we're finding our feet. My advocates are very well versed in health. They understand a lot of the services, where to direct queries. In social care, it's absolutely brand new, and we don't have putting things right in social care. We have a 2-stage system where you've got the informal in stage 1, and then the more formal investigation in stage 2. So our advocates are getting to understand those processes as well, because if someone just phones up, we've got to give the right advice from the start as well, haven't we? And that's just advice giving before we even follow that process ourselves. So yeah, a lot to learn. Masses to learn, but what I would say as well is our capacity internally has increased, because removing the council structure, the executive committee, the service planning committee we had, the monitoring and visiting group, you're taking a lot of the bureaucracy away, so it should create that capacity for people to do the job, as opposed to being sat in a meeting with members explaining what it is they've done for the last month instead. So I'm hoping that will free us up a lot more. That said, I think in 2 years' time, as an organisation Wales-wide, we're going to be asking for more resource in terms of advocacy. And the more we see cuts come into public services, I think more people are going to want to complain. So I completely agree with your points.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Jones. Councillor David Hughes, please.
Thank you. I was quite surprised when you said that the number of MSs didn't know about CHCs, because all the CHCs has local authority councils on them. So I quite surprised that you said that the MSs didn't realise about CHCs. That's one thing. Another thing is, why did we stop local authority councillors being on this on the whatever you call by year slice, is it?
It's not
Please,
please.
Well, we have some of that. Yes.
So in terms of the first one, we did have a lot of new MSs in the Cwmtaf Morgannwg area, but that said, the engagement wasn't there from the team going out and meeting with them and fully explaining what the CHC does. Now, when I ask someone, are you aware of the CHC? I don't want them to just say, I've heard the name, I've seen the colours or the logo. I want them to know what it is that we do. I want them to know that if someone comes with a health complaint, they can pass those through to our organisation, and that will allow the MSs or any other stakeholders, community representatives, to focus primarily on other things that we can't help with, and there might not be that support with moving forward. So, it could be housing matters, it could be financial matters. They can help with that because we can cover health really, really well. That said, you've got to be aware of who they are as well, as your colleague has pointed out. In terms of how the membership is set up, councillors can still become volunteers. Councillor David Isaac is still a volunteer. He was at the Big Bite with me. I'm very thankful for the hours he spent there, because he was out telling people who we were, getting there and filling our survey. And it does give us a better understanding, because I've worked for 12 years in the CHC in Cardiff and Vale. I'm from Tonypandy. My father lives in Bridgend, so I can cover those areas. I didn't know the Merthyr area, and I'm not going to lie to anyone. If I don't understand it, where's the best place to get that? I've got to be fair, David Isaac has been really, really helpful in helping me understand Merthyr and how we can set things up. And actually, he's been one of the driving factors in how we're going to link the Cynon Valley in with Merthyr, because it seems that Prince Charles and Ysbyty Cwm Cynon seem to be quite paired up as well. So no, we still need that resource. Just stripping away the membership model has just made it easier for people to come on board. So the only difference now is if you were to apply to be a volunteer with Llais, I would need you to declare an interest that you are a councillor, because obviously then the local authority is a conflict of interest as opposed to it wasn't before with health.
Being community advocates, we could have got the word out for you. You know what I mean? Because you said that not many people heard about you. We are in touch with the people, so we could have got it out for you. So, you know, maybe you missed the trick there.
Yeah, I think we missed many tricks. I'm hoping to put that right in the coming 6 to 12 months. I don't want to go into the next financial year, so a year on from the creation of Llais, in the same position we were this year. I want to have those networks in place. I think the great starting point for us was having made those inroads, small inroads. So I'm not saying we're done, but for the first time we were invited to the was the Voluntary Action Merthyr Tydfil, the celebratory awards we were at, which was a fantastic evening. I'll be fair, it's the first time I've been called a dignitary. I've never been called that before, but it was good to be there. And after everything stopped and they went to the entertainment, I stayed with the team on their table just to speak to them as well. And I've still got to get a meeting in the diary. Diaries have been conflicting, but no, we need to be on the ground with community representatives, and we just need to raise awareness. It doesn't matter at the moment if we do our visits to hospitals or we get to the events. If we can connect with the right people and build that network, that web, if you like, the more we cover, the better. And that's the priority.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Hughes. Councillor Julia Jenkins, please.
Sorry, he's just telling me how to pronounce your name. My question is, how do you find the level of interaction with the community, and how would you manage without recruitment of volunteers?
Good, that's a good question. I find when I've done a lot of the engagement so far, because I've felt where it's been lacking, they've needed to see that we're taking this very seriously. So that's why I've made a personal commitment to go myself. When I've been out and spoke to people, I think we've been received really, really well. I've had people sharing stories with other people, raising awareness and sharing it. Can I continue that as we move on when I need to start getting strategies in place and make changes? Probably not. Looking at some examples, I'll give you, just to give you a sense of it. When I was Deputy Chief Officer in Cardiff and Vale, I made a commitment to visit every GP practice over a period of time. I didn't set that time. With 24 members, without completely stopping any other activities, so the visits, engagement events, I managed to do the 66 practices in 22 months. HIW, because they need inspection managers, they need to bring in GPs, practice nurses, practice managers, and it costs money. On the programme they had set up, it would take 17.5 years. But if you get me more volunteers, if you get me 75 volunteers across my patch, I could probably cut that in half and do every GP practice in the course of a year. You can imagine having boots on the ground, engaging in every GP practice over the course of a year. Everything then becomes time bound to that 1 year. Everything becomes relevant to every other aspect of data. Over 22 months, the health board told us, well, what you heard in practice 1 is different to what you heard in practice 66. So I think I think we can achieve the same, if not more, but I think it becomes more relevant and less open to criticism if we can do things quicker, and we can cover a lot more with more volunteers.
It sounds a really good service, but it's a big commitment for a volunteer, isn't it? It's like a full-time. I know you say they can give what they want, but once you're involved with that person, you continue through. If the service is doing really well and the volunteers, which you find, are not so forthcoming as you wish, would you be able to get funding for paid positions?
I think in the current climate, we'd struggle to get any additional funding. What I can point out is in our board papers is the CHC budget was circa 4.6 million. Our current budget is 7.3. So Welsh Government have committed to extra resource in terms of the advocacy, but taking the point that it needs to be evidence to get any more. So I think if we do get extra resource, it's going to be in advocacy because people need that more support. In terms of actually being out there, it's felt that the role is a volunteer role. That said, I still think we can be effective if I only had, well, I'll say I want 36 volunteers. Our membership used to be 36. Cwm Taf Morgannwg has not had 36 members for about 7 or 8 years. I carried across 12. 12 is not sufficient. If we can't hit 75, then I've just got to be more creative. What I can do is have staff go out with volunteers. But what my commitment is we will not undertake any visits or main engagement activities where there's contention with just staff. Reason for that is I don't want the accusation to come back that it's staff led, it's staff raising those concerns, it's staff abusing their positions. That's not to say any of my staff are that way inclined, but I think it's safer for us to remove any of those risks and not allow the public voice to be diminished because that opportunity is there for anyone to use it as a get out clause. So we've got to get the volunteers in. When I've spoken to about 5 or 6 groups, that's all over the last, I think, month and a half. If all my email interest converts into actual commitment from individuals, we'll have doubled that 12 to 24. And if I can achieve the same in the next 12 months, I'll start next year with 48 volunteers. And that's, what's that? That's 300% improved on what I came to the CHC with. So I think I can achieve quite a lot if we can just achieve that number.
Okay, thank you. And we'll see you in the next RPB. Unfortunately, I got to bring in with me.
As long as you can say our name, that's absolutely fine.
Thank you, Councillor Jenkins. Councillor Claire Jones had another question.
Me again, sorry. You keep on using the word funding and things like that. So I'm just, pardon my ignorance, but where is the money coming from for the service then, please? Are you registered as a charity?
Our funding comes direct from Welsh Government. So we are classed as a Welsh Government sponsored body. We were created under the engagement bill that created the duty of candour and the duty of quality on the health service. But once we came to fruition and we were close to implementation, we were broken out of that bill and moved into a different ministerial portfolio to offer us our independence from the Minister of Health and Social Care.
Oh, wonderful, thank you.
Thank you. We have another question from Councillor Julia Jenkins. This will have to be the last question, though.
Question. Could you circulate the presentation, please? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Well, thanks for coming along, Dan, and giving us the presentation and answering the questions. It's very, very informative. You're quite welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting if you want to, but I wouldn't blame you in the slightest if you went. Okay, right, thank you very much. So we'll move back onto the agenda then. Agenda item number 4, minutes of previous meetings. That's items 4A to 4L. Councillor Geraint-Thomas.
Can I move the minutes, Mr. Mayor?
Thank you. Councillor Andrew Barry.
I second those, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Take that to a vote then, please.
Can I ask Councillor Kevin Gibbs, can you tell us if you're voting for, against or abstaining, please?
For, Monitoring Officer.
Thank you. And that's carried, Ms. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Agenda item number 5 is a question from a member of the public. Unfortunately can't be with us this evening, but we'll read it out. Has the WAO report on the review of the whistleblowing arrangements relating to safeguarding at Merthyr Council ever been considered and discussed at any official council meeting? If it has, please provide details of the meetings concerned. If not, why not? And when will the original report be presented to the full council for consideration and discussion? And Councillor Julia Jenkins is going to respond to that.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The response to the question. Reports were considered at Standards Committee November 2019, Governance and Audit Committee November 2020, and Social Services Scrutiny February 2021 in respect of the whistleblowing arrangements. A report was also received by Cabinet in July 2021, outlining the progress against the audit report recommendations. All recommendations have been actioned and addressed. In response to this further question, the Director of Social Services has written an information report, which is included in today's papers. This report outlines the work that has been completed in the past few years in respect of the whistleblowing and safeguarding and the responses to the audit to the inspection. I respectfully refer members to the report in the response to the question asked. And can I add, as per Mr. Jeff Jones's request, the original November 2019 audit report has been sent to all councillors. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that response. Agenda item number 6, scrutiny arrangements of the South East Wales Corporate Joint Scrutiny Committee to consider the report of the Chief Executive, and Councillor Andrew Barry is going to take this one, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So it's the scrutiny arrangements of the South East Wales CJC Corporate Joint Committee. The Corporate Joint Committees have powers relating to economic well-being, strategic planning and the development of regional transport policies. They have a statutory duty to prepare strategic development plans and regional transport plans. As such, the Corporate Joint Committee, the CJC, has a statutory duty to have scrutiny arrangements in place. This report seeks the Council's authority to implement that statutory arrangement. The legislative background is dealt with in Section 3, outlining the Joint Overview Scrutiny Committee, the JOSC, will meet 4 times per year and should comprise of a non-executive member from the authority. The length of any member's appointment is for the authority to determine, as is whether to have a deputy support the principal member in their absence, covered in the terms of reference. The terms of reference of the JOSC are outlined at Appendix 2. The additional financial implications of providing the scrutiny function will be met by the CJC under existing budgets. Recommendations 3, Mr. Mayor. 2.1, the appointment of the JOSC as the Joint Overview Scrutiny Committee or the JCJ, the Joint Corporate Joint Committee, be approved. 2.2, the draft terms of reference for its functions in respect of the CJC Corporate Joint Committee as attached at Appendix 2 be approved. And 2.3, not exactly written in plain English with a lot of abbreviations in there, but I'll read it out full. So 2.3, the cost of administering the Joint Overview Scrutiny Committee for the Corporate Joint Committee being dealt with by the service level agreement between Rhondda and Taff County Borough Council and the Corporate Joint Committee be concluded in due course, be noted. I move the report, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Gowran-Thomas.
I second that, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Thomas. Any questions, please? No, no questions. Any comments, then, please? No, no comments. So we'll take it to a vote then, please.
Councillor Gibbs, can you tell me, are you voting for, against or abstaining, please?
For, please, Monitoring Officer.
Thank you. And that's carried, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Agenda item number 7, communications, consultation and engagement capacity request. Consider the report of the Deputy Chief Executive, and that's Councillor Andrew Barry again then, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So communications, consultation, engagement, capacity request. We've already heard much about consultation and engagement and the focus on it. Through recent years, and specifically this year, Welsh Government have placed particular focus on public and stakeholder engagement across the sectors. In health, as we've heard earlier, there's also guidance to the health service engagement, a report that came out in May 2023. Within education, belonging, engagement and participation came out in June this year. Housing, Welsh Quality Housing Standard, a report in September 2023. Youth, Strengthen Youth Engagement and Progression Framework, July 2023. The national principles of public engagement in Wales are a set of 10 principles for engaging with the public and service users. The principles aim to guide the way engagement is carried out to make sure it's good quality, open and consistent. The Senedd has released a public engagement toolkit that outlines a wide variety of methods used by Welsh Government to enhance links and target audiences with and the wider public. Capacity issues have left the authority exposed, with part-time position being advertised, having no response for opportunities within the comms department. In June this year, I brought a paper to full council in relation to the council's participation strategy, to which only 11 people responded. We have to perform better, as Welsh Government's focus is well and truly on consultation and participation. Support for this growth request will support that position. One recommendation, Mr. Mayor, at 2.1, and that's that the request for growth be approved. I move, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Geraint-Thomas.
Second that, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Thomas. Are there any questions, please? Councillor Clive Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've got a few questions. First and foremost, why has the filling of this part-time post, which is suggested in the report should be full-time, come before council now, when the budget process for 23-24 began in early August this year? There may be other competing demands from other departments, which as a council, we do not know about yet. Because of the UK fiscal climate, this council will, with many other public bodies, have to seriously consider budget reductions.
Okay. Someone like to answer that?
Sorry, I didn't hear the last bit then. Thanks, Councillor Jones. Yes, so we brought it obviously to council now because with the changes of legislation to the public participation, we have a duty to be increasing our engagement more. So that is the reason we brought it now. We have currently not failed with regards to our statutory consultation requirements, but moving forward with the pressures to increase participation, that could happen.
So, Mr. Mayor, is there any reason why this has to be dealt with now and not at the time, and as I said, the budget process has started, when we are dealing with other issues and demands from other departments? Why has it got to be, in this case, your particular department at this moment in time?
As I said, I can only, obviously, I am totally aware of the savings that need to be made in this council and other local authorities. I can only talk about the pressures and the capacity issues within our department and the need to go out and engage more within our communities.
Mr. Mayor, if I can come in and assist, Councillor Jones, I think it's a matter of timing is the problem. So the comms team and consultation team are under pressure at the moment, and to wait for the normal budget setting round, that is the issue. I totally appreciate what you're saying in terms of considering it out of kilter, but it's down to the pressures the team are currently under, and then being able to try and recruit to what is currently within the budget provision only a part-time role, which we've been out and unsuccessfully recruited, unsuccessfully recruited to the 3-day provision, and that's why the team are requesting for growth at this time. But you're right, it is out of kilter with the normal budget setting process, but it's one of necessity.
Oh, sorry. Helps with putting the mic on. Why is the cost of increasing the hours of this part-time post being taken out of the council's earmarked reserves?
It's because at this point in time, it's as we basically said, is that it's not included in the budget for this financial year. So obviously, because it's not included, then it has to be found from elsewhere. And as we currently stand, that is just where it'll have to be found, is the earmarked reserves for this current financial year. And then in going forward from 24-25 onwards, it'll be included then as part of the budget setting round.
And in the report, Mr. Mayor, it does refer to the staffing structure there. But as a group, we want to know the roles and responsibilities of every member of staff within this particular department. But that's not there.
Obviously, we can provide that to you, but you'll see in the business case, it does cite the areas of responsibility for each member of staff.
Another two questions. It also states in the report that part-time retired post holder who finished with us on the 31st of July was working a great deal of overtime. It doesn't state in the report what the amount that was costing and how many hours on average per week. So that is other information that we would require to be in there. So somebody somewhere must have an idea of what the cost of the overtime was with the last post holder. Has anybody got that information in future?
It's difficult to gauge, obviously. You know, we can look at the overtime that we paid. The issue we had here was that this individual, the post holder, was doing a lot of work without claiming any overtime, working over and above the she were part of her hours in kind, and also you know, other team members were having to pick that up, her duties, to meet service needs. So, you know, it was very, very difficult to gauge.
I think I'm sorry. Yeah. Sorry, I think no, he's not. Sorry, beg your pardon, Councillor Jones.
All right. Last question. In the report, it refers to being unable to meet the statutory obligation. So were we meeting the statutory obligation when there was a part-time post holder there?
As I referred to the first question, we have been meeting our statutory obligation. However, as Councillor Barry said, Council agreed to increase participation in the decision-making process. We have to go out and do more consultation. So that would mean we would need more capacity and more resource to do that.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Jones. Are there any further questions, please? Councillor Declan Salmon.
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick question. I know the person that has left and they left in July. Am I right in thinking that that person decided to leave after the budget process had gone through, you know, after we'd voted on the budget in March?
Yes, she had, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions? Councillor Clive Jones again.
Can I move at this stage, Mr. Mayor, that this report be deferred until an appropriate time when it could be discussed properly with further information in the business case?
You can't move something which is simply what you would achieve by voting against it unless the person proposing is agreeing to defer. It's an amendment otherwise, in which case we'd have to take a vote on it as an amendment.
I'll move the amendment then.
You'll move it as an amendment. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. Is there a seconder for the amendment?
So are there any questions on the amendment then, please? Councillor Geraint Thomas.
For clarity in the record, Mr. Mayor, what is the amendment?
The amendment is that this be deferred to a future council.
Councillor Andrew Barry.
Can I ask what specific information is required on the basis of the deferral?
Question. I listed in two questions information that we haven't got there. One is about the overtime, one is about the roles and responsibilities. And I think I made the point in the first question that as a group, we feel that this is a matter that should be discussed when the budget process, which has already started, starts seeing the demands from other departments.
Is there any,
Sorry, yeah, Councillor Barry again.
is there any issue with this information being disclosed? Because we knew the post holder, and is there any disclosure issues with that sort of information?
There's no reason why that information can't be disclosed. And I think, as has already been responded to in the questions, it can be disclosed and would be disclosed. I think what Councillor Clive Jones is saying is that he doesn't want to vote on the item until they have that information, and that information is not available tonight. So the amendment is on the basis that Council doesn't vote on the issue until those pieces of information are available. So it's a matter for you as councillors whether you think you are able to vote on the matter without that information, or whether you accede to the request of Councillor Jones.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. Councillor Lisa Mitton.
I just for a matter of record again, you know, when we've done other jobs for other departments, I'm sure that we haven't gone through every job description of every job in other departments. What we've done is we've had a report that's come to council with recommendations from that line manager, etc., and then based it upon that and the need as within the body of this report. Would I be right in saying that? I think my colleague is asking for further information. Second part, that further information is a job description. Is that right, Clive?
Well, we certainly want a bit more information that we want as just a heading in the report.
Okay, thank you. Councillor David Hughes.
Can I ask, in the confidential, someone's wage, what overtime they earned? I wouldn't be happy if someone if council was to know what overtime I had been earned. If I had earned a package, surely that's between the authority and the person. Shouldn't be banded in a public meeting, I guess. Be honest here.
I'll ask the 151 to correct me if I'm wrong, but I think what we can disclose is actual budget spend within communications. It wouldn't be necessarily deemed as in this is what this individual officer's earned.
Okay, Councillor Declan Salmon.
Thank you, Chair. As Councillor Lisa Mitton has already mentioned, this has been brought because of a department need. I'm just asking Kerry if is there a danger if this doesn't go through tonight that the council wouldn't meet its statutory requirements set by Welsh Government?
Definitely, yes.
Thank you, Councillor Julie Jenkins.
I was going to ask exactly the same question.
Oh, same question. Okay, thank you. Councillor Jamie Scriven in that case then, please.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess from my perspective, and this is for Kerry, I guess reading the business case, what stands out to me is I'm trying to put two and two in my head and work out where the impact is of this increase to the post. And maybe it's because I haven't got the full picture of how you're currently operating as a department and what people are currently doing within the role. And I think perhaps that is where Clive is getting at with the job description. If I can physically see in front of me what that person is going to pick up in those increased hours, how it's taking the burden off. Because I think we're in a very particular circumstance where we've made difficult decisions with the budget publicly. In terms of council tax increase and different things. And I think it would be a difficult position to be in if we then taken out of reserves and the public can say, oh, we're just putting new posts in and we've just made all these decisions. So I just want to see a little bit more on the bone to understand how this will take the impact off you before I can support it, if that makes sense. That's kind of where I'm coming from. I work in participation. That's my job role. I've done for 7 years.
Sorry to interrupt, Councillor Scriven. Is there a question here or is that a comment? Because we're still on questions at the moment.
Oh, sorry. I think I went off the track a little bit. Sorry, Mr. Mayor. So the question is, are we able to get that additional information if that makes more sense contextually of what I'd be looking for, just to understand the department a bit more, what you're going through and how this takes the impact off, just what is that additional hours going to cover and how will it help you to meet the statutory duty?
Yeah, the only thing I can add, obviously, in the business case, you'll see the roles that cover consultation, because obviously it says in the job title. The only other thing, if I can just remind council, is Merthyr doesn't have a dedicated consultation team, so we're trying to juggle lots of balls. And I think with this individual, or with the individual post rather, the pressure of consultation was stopping her doing her other job. Does that make sense?
Okay, thank you. Councillor Darren Roberts, then please.
I've got a comment, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Comment.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, are there any more questions before we move on to comments? Councillor Gibbs. Is that a question, Councillor Gibbs?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Thank you. Kerry, you mentioned earlier from Councillor Salmon's question that you do see us failing in our statutory duties. Do you have any timescale on this, or when you would expect us to fail on these duties if this doesn't go ahead tonight?
Obviously not, but I mean, I think if we've made a commitment in council, as changes to our legislation, we have no other alternative to go out and engage more with our communities. And it'll be on that basis that we would fail. We wouldn't have no staff to go out to do that.
Okay, so when did this legislation change come in, Kerry?
January 2021, or March, was it? March, just checking with Anne. Yeah, 2021.
That's the date of the legislation, but it came into effect at different points. So parts of it were in April of last year. But yes, it's been a gradual introduction over the course of the last 2 years. Some of this engagement stuff has been phased in at different points.
Okay, so
And it's since that time that we've had more pressure on for the need to go out to consult, and we haven't had the capacity and resource to do that.
So this has been in place since last April, and we haven't had the resource and the capacity to do that, yeah?
No.
Was that a no to my question, or?
Sorry?
Was that a no to my question, or?
I think the answer was that it had been managed by somebody working overtime over and above what they were employed to do. And that's why you're being asked to consider growth to a full-time post so that it's not necessary to do overtime to enable that requirement to be met. It's not going to be met by somebody doing the job on the hours that the previous person was employed to work. Does that explain it?
Yeah, no, I'll be honest with you, Carlos, it does make perfect sense to me. The rationale behind it, it's the timing. Sure. For me, it's the timing. We've been in this position since last April. You're saying only now we're going to be, well, we don't even know when we're going to be failing in our statutory duty. So is there any reason why this cannot be held for 1 month?
Councillor Gibbs, could I just come in there? So the post holder only left end of June, July rather, sorry, and we've been struggling to recruit since then.
Yeah, but you've known that the post holder has been doing work over and above in overtime hours, whether claimed or not. So obviously she didn't have the capacity when this first started.
Yes, that's right. Yes.
Yeah. So my question, is there any reason why this cannot wait 1 further month?
That's the question that's going to be voted on, isn't it, now? So
Correct.
I think Kerry has given the answer that she can give, and now that the answer to the question you've just asked will be the answer that is decided by the vote, which will be taken in a moment.
No, no, it's not. It's not regarding whether it can, whether council deem it to weight carries, is whether we will fail in our statutory duties within that next month. Kerry says she does. Kerry says she doesn't know.
You come in, yeah.
Sorry, just if I could just come in here. I think the issue is the timeline. So if it does wait for another month, then the recruitment process following that, you know, the time to go out to advert, the time then for interviews, and then for somebody to give their notice potentially to another job. We've got our budget consultation coming up, which is a statutory requirement that we have to bring to a full council in February. So we're looking to start that process towards the end of October, which is next month. So there could be knock-on effects then in terms of consultations that we know are coming up, the budget consultation being one of those.
Okay, so it's possible. So what you're saying then, potentially next month we could be against our statutory duties.
I think potentially, yes, if we're left with just 2 comms and consultation officers covering the entire authority and doing the budget consultation with just 2 people within those positions, covering both comms and consultation. So, you know, obviously, hopefully not, but there is potential if we don't get a 3rd person in, then, you know, ideally we would have further growth within the team, but we know that that's not possible. That's why we're asking for the 2 days to make that position from part-time to full-time, just to support the needs of the department, and obviously our commitment to engage in participation, increasing, sorry, in participation.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Vicky. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Gibbs. Councillor Roberts, have you got a question now? Or is it still a comment? You still can comment. Okay, Councillor Barry, did you have a question?
Just in support of what Vicky was saying there and what the monitor officer said, in terms of the recruitment out to advert part-time, no response. In terms of the incremental increases in pressures to do consultation, I mentioned in my introduction, health came out in May this year, education, June this year, housing, September this month, youth engagement, July. There's an increase in the focus by this Labour Welsh Government on engagement and consultation. I've no doubt we're going to fall short very quickly. We've not replaced the officer that left. We need the officers left. You can see the pressure that's being brought by Welsh Government. We have to appoint. It's as simple as that.
Thank you. Councillor Jenkins, did you have a question?
Comment, actually.
Comment. So were there any further questions? No. So we'll move on to comments then. Councillor Mitten, was yours a question? No. Right. We're going to comments then. So it's Councillor Darren Roberts, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As far as the department goes, I can see that there's the need to have the growth that's required. We all know that some recent reports that we've had back following consultations have not been up to scratch, and Councillor Barry mentioned a couple of them earlier. For me and my colleagues, this is about timing. You know, we're asking council to take the money from earmarked reserves, but it sets a dangerous precedence that other departments and heads of service that are also feeling the pinch can come to council and ask for growth in their department as well. We are now going to be, as we've had a meeting this week with senior officers, we've been told that budget cases are being looked at, and we really need to know what the big picture is moving forward. For one, I'd love to support this and give that particular department, who do a great job, more resources to be able to do an even better job. But there is a bigger picture here. So that's all I'm asking, like my colleagues, is a little bit more time, a little bit more information to come back to members so that we can make that decision and move forward. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Lisa Mitten.
My colleague was before me, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, it's the way that the screen works. It's come to you now.
Oh, is it? All right. Okay then. Thanks. I'm amazed really at the audacity of some of my colleagues, especially Councillor Gibbs, who lambasted this independent group over the lack of, or deemed lack of, community engagement and consultation. And yet here we are with a very clear and concise report outlining why we need to do this, why it needs to be taken out of earmark reserves. I do agree with my colleague Councillor Darren Roberts about, you know, things like this may be set in a precedent, but not when it comes to statutory obligation. So if departments then suddenly think, oh, there's a little bit of a nest egg here now, we can start jumping on this bandwagon. No, that's not the case. Council and the officers are being sensible in this approach because of the statutory obligation we have. Common sense should prevail. This report should be supported tonight and not delayed. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Declan Salmon.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Lisa Mitten has said a lot of what I was going to say, but I will say that over the last couple of years, there have been many comments by elected members regarding the consultation and engagement process of the council. This report is asking to add an extra 2 days a week to a role, and if that helps the council engage better with its residents and also helps the council meet its statutory requirements, then I'm in support of it. The original.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Julia Jenkins.
With the expected further need for interaction and engagement with the public, we were very, very lucky to have the lady who did it in a post to work unpaid hours. She was obviously needed for more than a full-time post. So I think not only do we need extra 2 days, for the amount of work you're expected to do and improve, you could do with more staff than the extra 2 days anyway.
Okay, thank you. So are there any more comments on the amendment? No, so we'll take the amendment to the vote then, please.
So if you can vote on the amendment, which is to defer the original report. And can I ask Councillor Gibbs, are you voting for, against or in favour of the amendment?
In favour of the amendment.
Thank you. Councillor Carter, Councillor Gareth Lewis and Councillor Scriven. I know, it doesn't always register. Thank you. So, Mr Mayor, we have 13 in favour of the amendment and 14 against the amendment, and so the amendment fails. And now we need to go back to the debate on the original motion and to see whether there are any further questions or comments on that.
Yeah, thank you. So we're still on questions on the original recommendations then, please. Or any further questions on the original recommendation? Councillor Geraint Thomas.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and it's directed to Kerry and Vicky, really. And it's based on what the comment that Councillor Jenkins mentioned there. The amount of legislation that's being put on you for consultation and engagement, and it's growing and growing from Welsh Government. It's almost an industry now. How many people do you think you really need in your department to work effectively?
I mean, ideally, as we said, we would need a dedicated consultation team, particularly obviously with the changes to legislation, for people to totally understand and go out and meet people. With answer to your question, obviously, ideally, we like 4 consultation officers, but we currently obviously splitting it between 3 officers and comms.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Thomas. Councillor Anna Williams-Price, then, please.
Thank you. In July, this council debated the new 2023 consultation and engagement strategy. In that report, there was no concerns raised about the council's ability to meet its statutory duties, and there was no reference to any immediate financial implications linked to the development of the strategy. Could you advise why this concern was not identified in time for the July report, please?
Yeah, okay. Just for clarity, it was June that we brought the report. But that's a live document. We reviewed it since. We've looked at the needs for our consultation, and out of the participation strategy, our action plan under that. And as a result of that, we've realised that we are very much under-resourced and under capacity within the team.
Can I again just see clarity of why at that stage it was noted to council that there was no immediate financial implications linked to the development of the strategy, because I would consider immediate to be within the next 3 months.
As I say, we had the post holder in place then. It's not since that individual has gone that we realised how much communication work she was doing, and there was a gap for the consultation work needed.
Yeah, carry on. Yeah.
So this report was brought to council on the 12th of July, and at that point you would have been aware that the post holder was leaving. Is that correct?
Well, she wasn't. She left the post end of July, yes, but she didn't leave through a VER process, so she was unsure whether she was going to leave or not.
I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. No other questions have gone. So there are no more questions on this. We'll go on to comments on this then, please. Councillor Darren Roberts.
Yeah, I stick to my original comment, Mr. Mayor. You know, the team do a fantastic job and they clearly need more resources, but I just think we are jumping in a little bit too soon when there's clearly a bigger picture with budget setting. For me, if that particular department put a case forward for an extra 3 people and it met all of the budget setting process and something else gave and members were able to support that, I would support it wholeheartedly. But I just think that we are trying to rush this one through a little bit too quickly.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Roberts. Councillor Anna Williams-Price, then, please.
Thank you. I have real concerns about the way in which this proposed post is being funded. I think all the Labour group share the need for proper engagement with the public, and I think that was echoed in July's meeting. And if we had information about the financial impacts of the strategy at that point, there would have been a more robust and full debate in July on this matter. As it is, I don't feel that I can support this based on the funding methodology.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Geraint Thomas.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I think just for clarity, I think, you know, Kerry did have this under control. They went out to advert for a like-for-like post, the 3 days, but unfortunately they couldn't fill it. You know, they could no one applied for that job. So what they're asking for now is permission really for us to go out to advert for a full-time job, and we will get hopefully someone in that position. It's so important to us now going forward that we have to engage and consult over and over and over again. So we have to get behind our comms team. They've got a statutory duty to perform on behalf of Labour's Welsh Government, right? And they're the ones who are asking us over and over again, like I just said, to keep talking to the local people and the residents to see what their views are. So we must support the comms team this evening.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Thomas. So if there are no more comments on this, Councillor James Scriven.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I know there's a lot of mixed feelings around the room, especially from colleagues, etc. So I think all I want to say, Kay, is I understand the work that you do in the department, and it's really important to me that we get that right. I know I've been critical previously about the quality and the impact that our consultations have about numbers and different things. So I guess to me, I can see from the answers you've given us to the questions that this isn't, I don't know if it'll solve the quality problem and the numbers we have in terms of engagement, but I can certainly see now where you're coming from in terms of needing to go out and do that engagement. It is difficult when you've got capacity issues as a team, experiencing myself through my own work, and I totally understand that. So just want to say that I am fully behind you and what you and the department are doing. Obviously, where I've been coming from with this is just I didn't have all the information in front of me to fully understand your situation in order to support the case going forward, if that makes sense. That's kind of where I was coming from with my comments anyway. We want to improve participation. It's at the heart of everything I do. I want it to be great for everyone. But obviously just need to fully understand the situation when we're talking about business cases and what the impact is of putting a case forward.
Okay, thank you. If anybody else would like to make a comment before Councillor Andrew Barry closes the debate, can you indicate now, please? No one else is indicating, so I'll pass over to Councillor Andrew Barry, and this will close the debate.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. What we need to remember is this is officer recommendation. This is approved by the 151 officer. I think our budget setting process, with the detail this Labour group require, is going to make our autumn budget setting process a very long and arduous process if you want to cross every T and dot every I, particularly when the 151 officer has agreed it. It's a bit rich as well, mate, when Welsh Government putting so much pressure on its authority to consult at every turn, when in the recent 20-mile-an-hour consultation that was carried out by Welsh Government, 6,000 people were consulted. 53% of them said that they didn't want the 20-mile-an-hour zone. There are commentators in London now calling it Soviet Wales, and you can see why if you're going to ignore consultation results. We are doing our very best to satisfy our statutory demands. We have so far. We're in danger of not doing it. The officer recommendation, albeit as a sticking plaster at the moment, and we'll have to see how that works. But those are the recommendations in front of this chamber tonight. And if we don't take those recommendations, we're in danger. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. So I'll hand it over to Carys to take a vote now, then, please.
Yeah, so if members can vote electronically, and then I'll turn to Councillor Gibbs. Councillor Gibbs, are you voting for, against, or abstaining on the original recommendation?
Against.
Thank you. Councillor Gareth Lewis, I can see you pressing the button, but who wasn't registering? Thank you. So, Mr. Mayor, that is 14 in favour, 13 against, and so that is carried.
Okay, thank you very much. So we'll move on to the next item then. Agenda item number 8, revision to the Common Housing Allocations Policy for Community Housing Allocations. And as Councillor Michelle Simmons is taking this report, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The revision to the Common Housing Allocations Policy for Community Housing Allocations. Report authors Jennifer Rees, Suzanne Lewis-Abbott and Suzanne Stevens. Jennifer Rees and Suzanne Stevens join us in the chamber this evening. Members approved the Rapid Rehousing Transitional Plan in October 2022. That plan seeked to mitigate the effects of homelessness by swiftly addressing urgent housing needs. A step of working towards the Rapid Rehousing Transitional Plan involves reshaping the Common Housing Allocations Policy. The summary of the report. This report aims to present the context behind the necessary revision to the Common Housing Allocations Policy to align with the Rapid Rehousing Transitional Plan. The requirement to modify the Common Housing Allocations Policy to shift its focus towards prioritising applicants with the highest need for community social housing or the need to move to a more suitable community housing property. The need to change the Common Housing Allocations Policy to include changes to the housing legislation, including the Renting Homes Wales Act 2016. The report seeks the approval from members to approve and adopt the new Common Allocations Policy as another step working towards the Rapid Rehousing Transitional Plan. There is only one recommendation, Mr. Mayor, and that is the Common Housing Allocations Policy be approved. I move.
Thank you. Councillor Geraint Thomas.
Can I second that, Mr. Mayor?
Okay. Thank you. And we'll move on to questions. And it's Councillor Declan Salmon, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, I'd just like to point out that at 5.3 in the report, it does mention this was passed by full council in February 2023. It wasn't. It was full council 19th of April 2023. First question at 6.2, a planned shutdown of the service for 2 weeks for all housing register applications to be reviewed under the new common allocations policy. This will include all new applications on hold and advertising of properties on hold. Suzanne, what will that mean for new applicants and or applicants that have been given or are given a RHW 17, which replaces the section 21?
Okay, this just relates to just general housing applications. So we will still continue to accept homeless presentations and carry out those assessments. But it will just mean that the system will effectively be closed down for that 2-week period, because the existing applicants on the waiting list will have to have the banding reviewed. But it's not going to put anyone at any disadvantage. Obviously, if someone does have a homeless presentation, we will continue to carry that out.
At the end of the report, 8.1 mentions the main positive impacts are, and it's basically working through reduction of applicants residing in temporary accommodations and provide a swifter move on when properties are advertised through the housing register, in return reducing costs to the local authority, and then people moving on from supported accommodation will be expedited. Does this mean trying to move people out of the hotels, bed and breakfasts and into the HMOs faster?
The objective is to move them into a source of secured accommodation.
Okay, it's just my worry is because some of them people have got complex issues and needs. I'm just worried that maybe they get released a little bit into that sort of accommodation a little bit sooner, and it could cause issues in the community, because basically it is at the moment already, to be honest.
I mean, as you'll be aware, we now meet in our duty under the suitability of accommodation order, as are many other local authorities now meet in our duty due to the length of time the people are spending in B&B. We do have many that have been there now 1-2 year plus because of the lack of move on accommodation. So, you know, moving into HMOs will meet that duty because there are appropriate facilities at those properties. We do obviously carry out a risk assessment when looking who we place in the HMOs. So those with the more complex needs would be moved into alternative supported accommodation, you know, as and when those spaces become available.
Okay, cheers, Suzanne. Just going on to Appendix 1. At 6.9, it mentions basically it's when an applicant refuses. In the case where an applicant is awarded Band 1 reduced or Band 2, applications will have the priority band reduced in accordance with Section 10 of the policy if they have refused 2 or more reasonable offers of accommodation. My issue is with the or more, because that could confuse people. Are you going to put in there that it's if they refuse 2 properties?
The 2 properties refers to those that are just on the general register with no homeless need. Excuse me. Then homelessness, it is just one offer of accommodation before the duty is excluded. I think where we refer into 2 or more is if someone is offered a property, but then we could deem it unreasonable in terms of, so if say they refuse a property because it's in an area where a perpetrator of domestic abuse could be, so that's why it's 2+. But you know, we're happy to amend that to make it more clear for applicants.
It's just to make it clearer for residents, and then also following on from what you said there as well, when an applicant is owed a homelessness duty and refused 1 or more reasonable, would it not be better to say 1 that they've refused a property?
I think it's because it differs where someone is owed a full homeless duty. If we make 1 suitable offer and they refuse, we can discharge our homeless duty. That doesn't stop them applying again outside of a homeless duty, where they would be in reduced preference if they refuse a second one. It is quite complicated, but you know, there's different legislation for the 2 groups then.
Yeah. Basically what I'm getting at, to be honest, this is a slight comment, sorry, it is because it is a big report, and it's quite handy for councillors to have, because when somebody asks a question, you can present that report and it gives all the information on why you will be band 1, band 2 and band 3 and that sort of thing. So I just make it a little bit easier. I've got another question. At 7.3 in Appendix 1, 7.3 in Appendix 1, in the table used to provide an outline of the reasons and criteria used to determine the priority awarded to applicants. In band 1 reduced, it's got people where it has been verified by the council are rough sleeping within Merthyr Tydfil. Why would someone be in the reduced high priority if they're sleeping rough?
I think that just refers to verified rough sleepers at the initial stage, because once they placed in temporary accommodation, we have to do further investigation. So, for example, we would look at intentionality test and also whether they have a local connection. So in the latter, if they don't have a local connection to Merthyr, they would be referred on to the local authority where they have that strongest connection. They would probably end up being in band 1 if we did owe them a full homeless duty, but that would just be band 1 reduced at that initial stage whilst those investigations are ongoing.
Okay, that makes sense. And to be honest, I was wondering if maybe you could add a little piece in there to explain that, if you don't mind. And last one, at 10.3 of the appendix, just in regards to when an applicant has an association with the council, the housing association, either being an employee, relative or an elected member, that they would have to go through the whole process, exactly like everyone else, and there's no favoritism at all.
Yeah, they're treated the same as any other person on the waiting list. And generally in those cases, we would refer it possibly to the local housing panel just for that transparency.
Okay, lovely. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Salmon. Councillor Clive Jones, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Got a few questions. We support this report, by the way, but we want some questions answered. First one is on page 90 and 4.3. I take it this report was written several weeks ago, because the first sentence in there says there are 104 in temporary accommodation as of the 2nd of August under a housing duty. Can the officer tell me what is the current figure? So this is 6 weeks later.
Okay, as of yesterday, we had 96 in bed and breakfast, with a further 51 across our hostels, HMOs and other temporary supported accommodation.
56, right. Okay, thanks. Another question on same page under 4.5. And it says there, presentations of those at risk of homelessness or are already homeless have not increased this year in comparison to previous years. When you say this year, I presume you mean the last full financial year, which you quoted here, but there's no figures in this current year. So is that right?
This year means to the current financial year, yeah. That's what we're referring to.
Up to
Is
the
that what you mean?
Up to the 31st of March 23, or is that figures included right up until the end of August?
Yeah, it's to do with the last financial year, because obviously we haven't got full up-to-date figures, but we're not seeing an overall increase this year so far. I haven't got any figures to hand for you for this year so far, but I can get that.
Right. Mr. Mayor, I think it would be helpful to members to know if there's a trend emerging. If you've got the figures, and I presume you have, for the first 5 months of this year, up to the 31st of August, that is sent to all council members. So if the figures are coming down, hopefully that's going in the right direction. My next question is on page 92, because it's paragraph 5.3. Last part of that says steps have been made to progress this with this also, and there are properties in the pipeline working in partnership with D2 properties that we currently have HMOs within Merthyr Tydfil, as well as more units of supported accommodation to help those with support needs. So I know there's work being undertaken here. So how far have we got when you talk about there are properties that have been identified? How many have already been identified? how many will come offline in this current financial year until the 31st of March? And how many do you anticipate in the next financial year? And how many individuals will that cover?
Okay, so we've had 2 additional HMOs that the landlord is going through the purchase process at this point in time. One, I believe, is due to complete in the next week, which will offer 2 bedrooms. And there's an additional property that will take a few months because there's some quite extensive refurbishment to be done, which should be ready by the end of December. We've also shared information in regards to an additional 3 properties this week, which only today has been approved by the chief exec and leader of the council. So we will be contacting the landlord in the next few days now to progress those. In total, that should give us an additional, let me do the maths in my head, about 13 bedrooms for single people. One of them we are looking to use primarily for family accommodation, but we are proposing that the private landlord does get planning for HMO, so that if demand for family accommodation, isn't there, that we can then be flexible and use it for single people, depending on where the greatest demand is.
On page 93, it refers there, you get me right. In paragraph 5.5, or is it 5.6? It refers the number of properties have been secured. How many properties are we talking about? I'm on it's 5.6. Was it 5.5? 5.5, sorry. It refers in it to cash bonds and first month's rental. But I haven't got an idea from there. So how many properties what's the take up is what I'm trying to find out.
Okay, I haven't got exact figures of how many people we've actually supported, but through the Welsh Government Homeless Prevention Fund, which we're allocated approximately 105,000 for this financial year. As of today, the expenditure to date was just over 12,000.
Right. And on page 93 under 5.6, it says there you plan to upgrade the system to improve the housing register. When will it start and when will it finish?
The actual technical upgrade is ongoing at the moment. Some changes have been implemented. For example, customers are now able to use their mobile phones to register applications, which that platform didn't support it previously. Also, people are able to upload documents now onto the system, whereas previously they'd have to come into the Civic Centre and we'd have to copy them, etc. But there are further sort of technical improvements being made, which should be completed within the next 6 to 12 months.
Okay. And on the appendix, the page 106, it's 610. Councillor Sam has touched upon this. It says applicants with no local connection to Merthyr Tydfil will be permitted to register on living Merthyr Tydfil, but will not be awarded additional priority. So does that mean that we take applications outside the county borough of Merthyr Tydfil and that's going to continue?
Yeah, we'd have a statutory duty to do that, because if someone presents to Merthyr because of risk due to the local authority they flee in, then they're legally allowed to present to any local authority, so we would have to.
And do we have many of those?
I don't have the numbers to hand, not a great deal, but we do have some, yeah.
Okay.
But the same, we have people moving out to Merthyr presenting at other local authorities as well.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Jones. Councillor Anna Williams-Price again, then, please.
Thank you. Councillor Simmons, could you advise if information is kept on how many individuals currently in temporary accommodation have been identified as ready to sustain a tenancy?
Oh, sorry, is that for me to address or did you say councillor
Sorry.
Timmins?
Like to come on.
Oh, sorry. Sorry, can you repeat the question again?
Could you advise if information is kept on how many individuals currently in temporary accommodation have been identified as ready to sustain a tenancy?
I don't have the figures to hand, obviously, but obviously we do that assessment. But under rapid rehousing, you know, which is a directive from Welsh Government, then the plan is that everyone, you know, is offered a home rather than go through the traditional steps of supported accommodation, you know, and have to meet certain criteria before they move on to the next. So under the transition plan, then, you know, those that can sustain a tenancy with support would be offered permanent accommodation, just general needs. Obviously, there is going to be a cohort that probably realistically wouldn't sustain a tenancy. For those individuals, they're more likely to go through our Housing First project where they'd get more intensive support, or, you know, we are looking at creating additional supported accommodation for those that we think long term realistically would never sustain a tenancy for, you know, for various reasons. But those, you know, those numbers are limited.
Thank you. And just to follow on that, so are we confident that the current policies, not just the common allocations policy, but the suite of policies we have in the Housing Directorate, are sufficient to ensure that as many people as possible under this new system will be ready to sustain tenancies? And so if we're prioritising people who have been through temporary accommodation and have all the associated trauma of homelessness, are then ready to make that step into that permanent accommodation?
We can never give 100% assurances for anybody, but obviously it supports the principles of rapid rehousing, which is the directive of the Welsh Government. So, you know, it's something that we have to do.
Thank you, Councillor Claire Jones, then please.
My question is, you know, the new banding system now. So how will the new banding system affect current individuals banded? So are they going to be rebanded as well?
We're going to review every applicant on the waiting list just so we've got reassurance that everyone is in the right banding, but it shouldn't have any impact on anyone that is not in an urgent need to move. So those that are currently in band 2 or 3 who may have a need, but it's not an urgent one, should remain the same. So we'll have, you know, no impact to the existing policy. The only effect this will have is that those that are in temporary accommodation, such as B&B, will have priority over those that are homeless but able to stay with family, or, for example, those that might be in unsuitable accommodation in terms of the property being, you know, severely overcrowded.
Sorry. So the current individuals who are on the banding system at the moment, are they aware? Have they been made aware of this new banding? Because obviously, with them bidding now, if somebody all of a sudden is second or third on the list and they apply for a property and expect to be first or second, and all of a sudden they're 10th, are you getting the information out so that everyone is made aware of the new banding system and the reallocation of their placements, you know, the positions?
So we haven't been able to obviously publicise this until it's all agreed at council and everything. So there is a plan to advertise it, make the community aware of the change over a month period, just to ensure as well that there's that housing education, so they're aware of it all, so they can ask those questions. We have our hub provision as well, where if people got additional queries or anything like that, they're more than welcome to come in as well and ask those questions and establish what might be the impact on them. But yeah, so they'll all be aware, and then we'll go through that full review process of every single application to make sure that everybody is being banded fairly under the policy, and everybody will have letters and all the communication. So I'll be using the Living Merthyr Tydfil website to communicate all of that as well, and they'll have the Housing Gateway inbox as well, where they can email any queries as well.
So finally, do you think your housing team has got the correct amount of people in place to deal with the amount of queries you're going to have? Because people are going to have these letters, they're going to see that their banding is potentially changed, and they're going to have queries about it. So are you able cope with the strain that you're going to be putting yourself under.
We are expecting an increase in phone calls and things like that into the service, and hence why as well we're going to be utilising our early intervention officers as part of the communications as well, and yeah, and just making sure that it's all clear, giving us that time, and if we need to adapt to any future thing that around it all, then we'll try and adapt as much as possible to it, but we want to implement the change as smoothly as possible and follow it up as well with monitoring and reviewing and consulting as well with people to see if there's any impact on that as well.
Thank you very much, and as you know, I welcome this anyway, so.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Brent Carter, please.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. I've got a question. I wasn't going to ask a question tonight, actually, but Suzanne, you prompted me to ask one. I apologise. And it centres around the HMOs. You mentioned there was 2 going through at the moment, and another 3 have been agreed by the chief executive and the leader. I'm just going to go back to a previous meeting where HMOs were mentioned, and we proposed an amendment. We talked about ward councillors being notified. Can you confirm to me that the ward councillors have been notified in all 5 of those properties, please?
I can indeed. An email has been sent out from our housing strategy officer at the initial stage, as well as obviously we followed the protocol in terms of contacting other internal departments. Yeah.
That's great. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Carter. Councillor Claire Jones, you're indicating again?
Yeah, I was just going to jump in as well because we are affected as a ward, and I will say that we have had full communication from the officers with everything. So thank you ever so much. You know, it has been on point, Brent. I think I can offer you reassurance for there because it is full communication. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any further questions? No further questions. So can we have any comments then, please? Councillor Geraint Thomas.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Reading the report, you know, seeing the numbers dropping so fast, really, now in temporary accommodation, from temporary accommodation into other forms of housing, seeing the list that's on the report as well of the social housing that's going to be coming online over the next few years is really encouraging. And I just want to go on the record, you know, to thank Suzanne and her team, you know, in the housing department, because they've really been at the coalface over the last 3 years, working in some atrocious, you know, let's be fair, atrocious conditions, you know, with some of the challenges they've had to face. So can I just thank you all, Suzanne and all your team, for your dedication and hard work, because I know it's been really difficult. So thank you.
Thank you, and I'll pass that on to other members of the team as well.
Thank you, Councillor Declan Salmon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think I've already said earlier that the report contains a lot of information and will be valuable to all local councillors, elected members, you know, to be able to give that information to residents. Might not like the information they're given, to be honest, but it is clear. So thank you very much for that. This should have been a question, as I do apologise. Many people here tonight currently live or have lived in community housing, which was called council houses. Sorry, just a question. Would I be right to? Right. Okay. Right. Comment then. Just following on from Councillor Brent Carter asking if ward members had been updated, and I know since the meeting. People won't like what I've got to say now, but at that full council meeting on the 19th of April, when HMOs were passed by the majority of councillors, and I understand the difficulties the housing department are going through, and also the difficulties, you know, people looking for properties. But that decision, I think, will come back to bite some of our councillors on the behind. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Clive Jones.
This is a massive task as far as the department is concerned. There's a huge change, and I certainly, I'm sure other members would welcome a further report in due course as to how this has turned out, and frankly, what the numbers are like on the waiting list. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Anna Williams-Price, please.
Thank you. I think it's always useful for councillors to receive a report on this matter, as it's one of the biggest priorities facing the council, certainly since I was elected last year. Obviously, a lot of it is driven by Welsh Government policy with regards to ensuring that no one is left out, and that's become, since COVID, a long-term commitment, which I believe is the right one. In terms of what we're seeing in this report today, I think there's some green shoots in, and it's good to see the amount of planned and also completed social housing, which I think really rounds off what is trying to be achieved, because that's what we need to help with this issue. As you know, it's an issue that I've taken interest in terms of the Housing and Regen Committee, and I do look forward to receiving further updates via that as it's part of our full work plan for January 2024. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Are there any further comments? No, in which case we'll take to a vote then, please.
Councillor Gibbs, can you tell us if you're voting for, against or abstaining, please?
For.
Thank you, Councillor Gibbs. And that's carried, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. So next item, agenda item number 9, ban of pets as prizes on council-owned land and property. And that's Councillor Michelle Simmons, please.
Thank you again, Mr. Mayor. The ban of pets as prizes on council-owned land and property, report author Andrea Jones. In the summary of the report, the council currently voluntarily declines requests to allow animals as prizes on council-owned land and property. There is currently no political decision supporting this. In recent years, there has been an increasing concern about this practice from members of the public and Welsh Government. The RSPCA often runs campaigns raising concerns and have lobbied Welsh Government calling for a Wales-wide ban. There is no current UK legislation available to control this issue, and it is therefore up to each individual local authority to consider the issue for themselves. 12 authorities in Wales have already introduced a voluntary ban. At 2.0, the recommendations, there are 4, Mr. Mayor. 2.1, an immediate voluntary ban of allowing animals as prizes from the use of council-owned land and property be approved. 2.2, a corporate instruction advising all building managers within the council of the ban be approved. 2.3, a communication advising all council tenants of the ban be approved. And 2.4, the ban to include events on council-owned land and property hosted by the council and or third parties be approved. I so move, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Michelle Jones.
Happy to second that, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions then, please? Councillor Clive Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I got 2. On the first one, what evidence have we got within the county borough of Merthyr Tydfil, probably going back some years, have we got on council land of ducklings, dogs and horses being given as prizes?
Is Len Rickson on the line? Can she answer that, please?
Oh, hello. I don't know whether we have any evidence to cover Merthyr, but since I'm told that there was numerous cases reported to the RSPCA of live animals being given as prizes in Wales, but we don't know whether that covered Merthyr. So the Welsh Government advice is for each council to decide, and we're getting more and more inquiries now for community groups to use council land for fetes and fairs, carnivals and so on. So we don't want any negative impact on those days when community groups are out there trying to raise income for the clubs.
Okay. And my second question is, in the recommendations at 2.1, it refers to an immediate voluntary ban. How can that be enforceable if it's voluntary?
Well, the Future Generations Act covers safety and welfare of animals, so we can pick it up that way. But we can also include it in agreements. And when organisations want to hire land, we can put it into a license agreement and cover it that way. So they have to comply with the conditions under that license.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Hannah Williams-Price, please.
Thank you. Firstly, with regards to the council currently voluntarily declines requests to allow animals and prizes, could you advise whether a record is kept of such requests, and if so, how many requests have been received within the last 5 years?
We could get that information, because it would probably be on email asking if they could hire land for community use. But obviously, I think most of these cases have been goldfish being dropped in bags on the floor and that type of thing at fetes. But I could get that information, but I haven't got it to hand.
Thank you. And Councillor Simmons. Thank you. Councillor Simmons, could you advise what is the rationale for implementing this ban now, as opposed to in response to the Minister for Rural Affairs letters in December 2019?
Thank you, Councillor. We've recently had new communications through the RSPCA. As you know, I was new to taking over the Cabinet portfolio of May this year. When that letter arrived, I immediately went to officers who said that the report had already been drafted prior to COVID, but unfortunately it had taken a back seat from then. So that's why it's been prompted now. But the report had been written. We had voluntarily been declining requests since that letter from the Minister, but now we're making it more official.
Right, thank you. Any further questions? No. So any comments then, please? No, there's no comments. So we'll take it to a vote.
Councillor Gibbs, are you for, against, or abstaining?
For.
Thank you. Councillor Ian Thomas, thank you. And that's carried, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you very much. Items 10, 11 and 12 are information reports. Item number 13, to deal with any other urgent business or correspondence. There is no urgent business. Item 14, to receive communications from Their Worship the Mayor. There are no communications. So on that note, I'd like to thank you all for your attendance here this evening and declare the meeting closed. Thank you.